There's an infinite amount of cash at the Federal. There's an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve. There's an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve.
Good morning, Bitcoin. My name is Thomas Hunt. Today is Saturday, May 9th, 2020, and this is the World Crypto Network. Be sure to check out our other show that's currently airing live. Thanks to YouTube for giving us the ability to air two shows at once. This just means that you can choose to watch one of the shows, pause the other show, and come back to watch it later. I'm not even saying you have to watch this show, but if you're interested in the Lightning Network, check out the Lightning Network Sprint number 2. It's going on right now on the World Crypto Network. We have all kinds of Lightning developers. They're talking about the new apps that they're writing and the ways that they're using the Lightning Network to bring more Bitcoin and more Bitcoin activities to you. So give them a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up. We have two shows at the same time, so you do have choices, and you can always watch one of them later. That's one of the great things about YouTube, is it saves the old videos for later. So shout out to Josh, who's hosting the Lightning Network chat over there on World Crypto Network number 2. There he is right there, Josh. Or maybe he's on number 1 because I started later. We're on number 2 here. Anyway, the price of Bitcoin is down 3.12% in the last 24 hours, with a last of 9,679, a high of $10,014, and a low of 9,463. Volume is very high for a weekend, with 11,216 Bitcoins trading hand. The market continues to lean margin long, as it likely will until the halving, with 83% of the market reporting that direction. The halving still seems to be creeping closer. Many are sticking to May the 12th, but we're now seeing many reports, including Bitcoinal, saying that just in 358 blocks on May the 11th at 7:24 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, you just might see a halving. So stay tuned to the World Crypto Network. We'll be having a halving party. Our surprise guest is you. So we're hoping you can make it. We'd like to hear your stories about how you found Bitcoin. And if you don't want to tell a story or give away anything, sure, you could just call in and give a nice send-off to Bitcoin for the halving. Just say, hey, thanks for, 4 or 5 great years here. Hoping for, 10, 20 more. This has been a fantastic time. Something like that. Just a nice thing to say about our pal Bitcoin as he's going through his halving. The price was down. I wonder what the Magic 8 Ball said. For those of you who don't know, we do have access to the predictor of predictors, the prognosticator of prognosticators, the Magic 8 Ball. Let's see, just yesterday on the Bitcoin group, what did the Magic 8 Ball say was going to happen with the price of Bitcoin? Let's check in with the Magic 8 Ball, see what's going on in the world of Bitcoin predictions. As you know, this is the most accurate Bitcoin predictor. It has never been wrong. Never. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? Predictor, it has very doubtful. Very doubtful. So there it is. 10K may be a top. Let's move on to the exit question. Same things to the panelists. Of course, now you have to follow the 8 Ball. Crypto Raptor, will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? So there it is. The Magic 8 Ball hath predicted the price went down 3%. Good thing that you are all making all of your price decisions based on the Magic 8 Ball, which is just as good a way as any other to predict the price of Bitcoin. Checking out some Bitcoin news before we get to this morning's reading. Here's why altcoins are bouncing. As Bitcoin retraced from 10K is bullish. That's right, the altcoins are still down. Many were moving their money from the altcoins to Bitcoin to take advantage of those incredible gains. However, the article believes that as the money flows into Bitcoin, it will also flow back into altcoins. Maybe even more money. Bitcoin gains ground on gold, bolsters claim as the asset of tomorrow. Well, we all knew that, right? Bitcoin rally stalls at the psychological and ridiculous number of 10K. Look at all those zeros. But dip buyers should watch these levels. That's right. Buy the dip. Buy the dip. And now a reading from the book I'm reading right now, which inspired the title of this video. It's a little clickbaity, but it's actually what I plan to talk about. What is the meaning of life? This is a reading, and I'm going to read kind of segments. I'm going to skip around. These are the parts that I highlighted. I definitely suggest everyone should read this book in its entirety. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. It's in 1946 by Viktor Frankl, and he chronicles his experiences as a prisoner of war, or a prisoner just in general, of the Nazi concentration camps during World War II. He also describes his psychotherapeutic method, which, as it says here, involved identifying a purpose in life to feel positive about, then immersively imagining that outcome. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. He calls it logos therapy. Logos, it means meaning, right? It doesn't just mean the word. It actually means meaning. So let's think of it without the Latin as meaning therapy, that your life needs to have some kind of a positive meaning. And here's Viktor Frankl himself from Man's Search for Meaning. Everyone has its own specific vocation or mission in life to carry out a concrete assignment which demands fulfillment. Therein, he cannot be replaced, nor can his life be repeated. Thus, everyone's task is as unique as his specific opportunity to implement it. And I kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday, or the last time we did the show, when we talked about the uniqueness of user input. And I know it's a stupid computer science thing, but if you get into Paint and you draw some kind of crazy triangle, the computer could have never predicted that you would have drawn that crazy triangle. It's your uniqueness that you're adding to the computer. And computers can do a lot of things, and they're going to do a lot more things in the future. But as try as they might, they're only going to be able to mimic that uniqueness. They might be able to have some randomness or have some chaos that makes you think that they're similarly unique. But the actual uniqueness comes from you. As he says here, everyone's task is as unique as his specific opportunity to implement it. So you might not be the sharpest tool in the tray. You might not be the biggest guy or the cutest girl or whatever, but you have a unique opportunity. You have a uniqueness, and that, like a key to a lock, you fit. I don't know where it is. I don't know what it is, but you fit. It would be my positive interpretation of that. Here's a little bit more. He says, ultimately, man should not ask what the meaning of his life is, but rather he must recognize that it is he who is asked. In a word, each man is questioned by life, and he can only answer to life by answering for his own life. To life, he can only respond by being responsible. And this is a big word and something he's going to talk about more here. Responsibility, at least in American culture or the way I've been raised and so forth, kind of comes off as a negative word, right? Responsibility is something maybe given to you by your parents. Responsibility is a pressure on you. You are responsible now. You are accountable, right? But he's actually saying that the only real thing you can do with life is be responsible. Even if you aren't responsible and you choose to do whatever, at the end of the day, you'll be responsible for being not responsible. I think this is a really big thing he's saying here. It seemed a little simple at first, the meaning therapy. There wasn't that much meat on the bone there, I thought, but he's getting into it. I'm going to skip a little bit ahead here. He says, the emphasis on responsibleness is reflected in the categorical imperative of logotherapy, which is live as if you were already living for the second time, and you had acted the first time as wrongly as you are about to act now. That's a really big one there. Let's slow down. Let's work through that again. Live as if you were living already for the second time, and as if you had acted the first time as wrongly as you are about to act now. It's a really big one. That's kind of like gives you the ability to think about what you're doing before you do it. I know it seems complex and that's an extra level. It adds to your thinking, but this kind of thinking could help you avoid mistakes. It could help you not hurt other people's feelings and these kind of things. You could think before you act. I know it sounds really simple, but That's what we're talking about here. We're skipping ahead just a little bit here. Drink some water, sorry. He says here, to put it figuratively, the role played by a logotherapist is that of an eye specialist rather than that of a painter. A painter tries to convey to us a picture of the world as he sees it. An ophthalmologist tries to enable us to see the world as it really is. The logotherapist's role consists of widening and broadening the visual field of the patient so that the whole spectrum of potential meaning becomes conscious and visible to him. So he's seeing his role as a therapist as more of a guide, more of a person that's trying to fix your eyesight rather than a painter that's displaying an already finished painting to you. I think this again talks about the direct and the inner meaning of logotherapy, that it's only you that can find the meaning. It's only you that can be responsible for the meaning. And even if you want to be irresponsible, we all know not making the choice is the same as making a choice, right? There's no neutrality, just means you didn't choose one way or the other. Things are still going to happen. We're going to skip ahead just a little bit more. This next section is called The Meaning of Love. And he's talking about the experience of ultimate togetherness that's called love. And he's talking about several of his clients that he's trying to help in his psychotherapy practice here. And of course, it's after the war now, and he's been released from the concentration camp, as have many of his other fellow prisoners. And he describes here a situation with one of them who came to him for help. And he had outlived his wife, so he's having a lot of trouble dealing with that. Here's what Viktor Frankl, Dr. Frankl, said to him. Excuse me. What would have happened, doctor, if you had died first and your wife would have had to survive you? Oh, he said, for her, this would have been terrible. How she would have suffered. Whereupon I replied, you see, doctor, such a suffering has been spared her, and it was you who have spared her this suffering, to be sure, at the price that you now have to survive and mourn her. He said no word, but shook my hand and calmly left my office. In some way, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment that it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of sacrifice. Skipping a little bit, he says, but in that moment, he says, of course, this was no therapy in the proper sense, since first, his despair was no disease, and second, I could not change his fate. I could not revive his wife. But in that moment, I did succeed in changing his attitude towards his unalterable fate, insomuch as from that time on, he could at least see a meaning in his suffering. It is one of the basic tenets of logotherapy that a man's main concern is not to gain pleasure or avoid pain, but rather to see a meaning in his life. I think that's a big one right there at the end. A lot of people just assume that we're gaining pleasure, we're avoiding pain. It's very simple. It's very animalistic, if you really want to go into it. But right here, Frankl is talking about a higher purpose. He's talking about people seeking meaning in their life. It's kind of a politically correct thing, but as a side note, let's understand Frankl's using he here. That's the simplest way to do it. This is a book from 1946. But we can assume that this also applies to women as well. Let's be frank. Let's move on to some more quotes. He had a doctor at the University of Georgia who reviewed his article about logotherapy, saying that our current mental hygiene philosophy stresses the idea that people ought to be happy, that unhappiness is a symptom of maladjustment. Such a value system might be responsible for the fact that the burden of unavoidable unhappiness is increased by unhappiness about being unhappy. This is another big quote. I think we're going to have to go back and unpack it here just a little bit. He says, such a value system, the always happy value system, might be responsible for the fact that the burden of unavoidable unhappiness is increased by unhappiness about being unhappy. And through a lot of this section, he's talking, obviously, the example of the doctor who lost his wife in the Holocaust, other people who have had unbelievable losses, where things have changed. People with terminal diseases, things that it's very difficult to be happy if there's a time limit, and certainly there's a time limit on everybody, but there's a tighter time limit on them. And he says that their unhappiness, which is kind of understandable, right? This is unavoidable unhappiness, is increased by unhappiness about being unhappy. So as much as they're in a bad position, their bad position is made worse by our always happy attempts. What the doctor suggests, and they're talking about logotherapy here, she says that logotherapy may help counteract certain unhealthy trends in the present-day culture of the United States, where the incurable sufferer is given very little opportunity to be proud of his suffering and to consider it ennobling rather than degrading. I really think he's on to something here. I don't think that we give people in these type positions the ability to be proud and to celebrate their suffering, and yet, that's what they have. This would give them purpose. As he says here, a couple pages later, in other words, life's meaning is an unconditional one, for it even includes the potential meaning of unavoidable suffering. Let me recall that which was perhaps the deepest experience I had in the concentration camp. The odds of surviving the camp were no more than 1 in 28, as can easily be verified by exact statistics. It did not even seem possible, let alone probable, that the manuscript of my first book, which I had hidden in my coat when I arrived at Auschwitz, would ever be rescued. Thus, I had to undergo and overcome the loss of my mental child, and now it seemed as if nothing and no one would survive me, neither a physical nor a mental child of my own. So I found myself confronted with the question of whether under such circumstances my life was ultimately void of any meaning. It's interesting, having lost both his physical and his mental children and his ability to pass on anything, he wonders if there is no meaning. Skipping ahead, he says, talking about some of his comrades and their views of the future, their question was, will we survive the camp? For, if not, all this suffering has no meaning. The question which beset me was, has all this suffering, this dying around us, a meaning? For if not, then ultimately there would be no meaning to survival. For a life whose meaning depends upon such a happenstance as to whether one escapes or not, ultimately would not be worth living at all. And I think this is another very important section and something worth reading twice and breaking down. What he's saying is, if you were in the camps and you were watching all the horrors and the people dying around you, and you thought because it wasn't witnessed or because it wasn't celebrated or because it wasn't understood or it wasn't even really even known about at the time, that it had no meaning. And what he's saying here is that all this suffering, this dying around us, a meaning. For if not, then ultimately there would be no meaning to survival. If this doesn't mean something, nothing outside does either, is what he's saying. For a life whose meaning depends on such a happenstance as to whether one escapes or not, ultimately would not be worth living at all. So you have to have a strong enough meaning that it still works if you're in a camp. Your meaning is not something they can take away from you. They may limit your ability to expand your meaning, saying if perhaps Dr. Frankl's meaning was to help people through psychoanalysis, he couldn't do that very much in the camps. It wasn't a very big option for him. But if his meaning was stronger than that, he could still practice his meaning. He could still continue his meaning. And especially when you get out of the camp, your meaning still has to be there. Your meaning has to be strong enough to survive. He goes through a little bit more here with the therapy of some of his other clients. One of them was a lady where he asked her to describe herself not at 30, but instead at 80 and lying on her deathbed. You're looking back on your life, which was childless, but full of financial success and social prestige. And he asked her to tell him about it. And here's a quote from the tape that he recorded during the session. Of course, this is long ago, and it doesn't have the patient's name or anything like that. "Oh, I married a millionaire. I had an easy life full of wealth, and I lived it up. I flirted with men. I teased them. But now I am 80. I have no children of my own. Looking back as an old woman, I cannot see what that was all for. Actually, I must say, my life was a failure." So he allowed this woman to look back, and or to look forward, and to just imagine where this emptiness was leading her. And she found that it led her nowhere, and that there was nothing in it, that all the dreams she had of wealth and flirting with men and all this didn't really matter. What she actually wanted was maybe a family, or maybe just to go, a step side, just to help other people. Part of a family is that you're helping other people. You're helping your spouse. They have problems. You have problems. Maybe you trade them off. You're helping your children. You're letting them become people on their own. It's pretty exciting, I guess. So there's another story of a woman who her son was crippled. Sorry, that's the wrong word these days, but he was disabled, or whatever you want to say. And this woman was having a really hard time raising him, and giving up her life to his life. And she actually tried to commit suicide with her boy, and the boy stopped her. He liked life. He had a meaning. He did not feel burdened. And he had her do the same exercise, and she jumped into the future, and she said, though her son is crippled and helpless, sorry again, wrong word, he is, after all, my boy. And so I have made a fuller life possible for him. I have made a better human being out of my son. At this moment, there was an outburst of tears and crying. She said, as for myself, I can look back peacefully on my life, for I can say that my life was full of meaning, and I have tried hard to fulfill it. I have done my best. I have done the best for my son. My life was no failure. And it's impressive the way that she can jump forward, and that she can understand now through the help of this exercise that she's doing an incredible thing helping her boy, and that she's not so much sacrificing her life as she is saving his. And as she says, she made a fuller life possible for him. She made a better human being out of her son. And it might not seem like enough, but it's enough. That's enough. And it's so much more than she had before she did the exercise, before she tried to push it. He's talking about another patient here that he's working with, and he's asking him, he says, then I pushed forward with the following question. What about man? Are you sure that the human world is a terminal point in the evolution of the cosmos? Is it not conceivable that there is still another dimension, a world beyond man's world, a world in which the question of the ultimate meaning of human suffering would find an answer? And I do think that's another important thing to focus on. While I'm not especially religious, and I'm not really taking this in as a religious text, it is also worth saying that we don't know everything. We don't know maybe even anything. And that, yes, after this, there could be a reason. There could be an explanation, whether it's as basic as the Rick and Morty episode where they're living in a simulator and your quarter ran out or something, or if it's more complicated and there's a judge and a jury, or a nice old man sitting on a cloud with a gray beard. Whatever it is, there might be something out there. And then finally, I think I'll close on this. Let me see. Yeah, it still keep going. I have more quotes, but and I'm going to do some news too. So, God help you if you want to watch the news. This is a closing line. He's talking about a psychiatrist who is asking this question. He got a question from his daughter, who is 6 years of age. She says, "Why do we speak of the good Lord?" Whereupon I said, "Some weeks ago you were suffering from measles, and then the good Lord sent you full recovery." However, the little girl was not content. She retorted, "Well, but please, Daddy, do not forget, in the first place, he had sent me the measles." And I just thought that was a clever piece of dialogue. And I'm not surprised that it showed up pretty much verbatim in Ricky Gervais's great movie, The Invention of Lying. So check out The Invention of Lying by Ricky Gervais. It starts out about a world where no one can lie. No one can tell a mistruth. They just, oh, I don't like you. You're ugly. They just tell you, But at one point he, kind of invents a higher power to try to fix up this world. And he pretty much says these lines verbatim. So I thought it was funny to see lines from a movie in an old book like this. But Ricky Gervais probably read it too. Once again, I strongly suggest Man's Search for Meaning. It's not an easy book to read. No doubt the first section is entirely his experiences in the camp. And, it's not fun. But I think it's a valuable and important book, and I'm glad that I'm reading it. The reason that I'm reading it now, not at another time when maybe I was studying World War II or something more specific, is I saw it recommended by 2 or 3 people. And I have kind of a new rule where if I hear something's recommended by 2 or 3 people, especially people that I trust, and the recommendations come pretty close to each other, you just got to read that. You got to watch that, whatever that is. That is a serious thing. It's hard. There's a lot of recommendations. I have a lot of lists of books that other people think I should read, as well as the books that I think I should read. But to see that and to read it, really works out. The other one I would recommend, especially if you're in a philosophical mood, is Midnight Gospel. It's a very strange animated show on Netflix. A guy that kind of looks like Mad Bitcoins. He's got a crazy hat. He seems to have, I don't really understand it, but it's kind of like maybe a hard drive of other universes. And he travels to the universe and interviews people. And the interviews are they're a lot more about what the person's about. Like Dr. Drew Pinsky was on the first episode, and he talked about a lot of, psychoanalyst type stuff. On the second episode, Annie Lamott was on there. She's a writer. She was also, not to talk out of school, but she's also an alcoholic. So she talked about substance abuse and life and the meaning and stuff. It's a very deep show. I wouldn't suggest watching more than one of them back to back. I just watch the one and let it percolate, let you think about it a bit. But yes, Man's Search for Meaning. That was today's reading. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like I said, I'm very sorry, but I have to do the news. Balaji, again, the startup maven, the one who actually could be in the DHS right now. He was rumored to be a potential Trump administration nominee. He even deleted every single tweet on his account at that time. So he really wanted it. But as Balaji is saying here, for all the folks arguing COVID-19 isn't that bad, what they are missing is that most consumer experiences aren't that good. You're 55. Are you going to risk serious illness for a trip to the movie theater? And he has this fantastic new chart provided by the Democracy Fund and the UCLA National Nationscape Project, a survey of 6,730 adults from April 23rd to 29th. And as you can see, 64% would not go to a concert, 61% not to the movies, not to a sporting event, don't fly on an airplane, 59% won't go to a shopping mall. Like, these are crushing numbers, right? This demand is not going to be there. As he says here, you're a libertarian, okay? One way of thinking about uncontrolled COVID-19 is a tax on every transaction. Some of your customers are risk adverse. So society's inability to control the virus means that all kinds of previously cheap transactions have now soared in price. So think about it from a monetary standpoint, if you can't think about it from another standpoint. As he says, think about this as a health outage, like a power outage. Our society is explicitly premised on the presence of electrical power and implicitly premised on low risk of serious infection disease. When the health goes out, some businesses don't work. And he lists just a few examples: retail, travel, hotel, restaurants, bars, concerts, sharing economy, large crowds of any kind. Just like a power outage, health is needed for these sectors to function. So let's see. Next slide. Policy-wise, other countries have controlled corona. That may yield the best long-run health and economic outcomes. But the U.S. isn't implementing ideal policy. It's reopening in highly variable ways. What then? And he says every physical business, this is alongside of the taxes as well, every physical business that now wants to reopen has a set of problems. They must pay for virus control, Purell, etc., compete with digital alternatives, theaters versus streaming, attract customers who suddenly have less disposable income. That's a huge new set of costs. It's a different world that we're living in now. Things have changed. Shout out to Little Richard, founding father of rock and roll, who, as Rolling Stone says here, broke musical barriers, passed away at 87. The pianist-based singer behind Tutti Frutti, Good Golly Miss Molly, and Long Tall Sally set the template that a generation of musicians would follow. Truly incredible, Little Richard. Go check him out. Ask your Siri computer to play some Little Richard for you, and just enjoy it. It's great, and it's very much roots rock. There's not a lot of stuff stacked on top of it. You can really hear his voice. You can really hear the piano. It's great stuff. Little Richard, dead at 87. Another shout out to the Netherlands. What a wonderful and beautiful place. The Netherlands will actually pay you to ride a bike to work. That's amazing. And I just watched another video where a guy was talking about how valuable his bike commute was. And even that he was retired, and even that he, by his own admission, had a very nice Porsche. But he said he still liked to bike to work, and that it had superior advantages. Look at that, the cars, the rush, the stress, and then look at what it would be like if we were back in the Netherlands. Oh, that corner even looks familiar to me. I've ridden around this place so much. But yeah, beautiful bikes everywhere. Bike theft is a big problem. They have multiple locks and all kinds of systems. But just look at that. More people pedaling to the office. We are seeing, perhaps because of the virus, some changes. Some streets in New York were shut down for bike traffic, or shut down. Oh yeah, I know where that is. Or they were shut down for bike access, or shut down so that restaurants could have open air cafes on the sidewalk. As much as this may seem a forced thing that we're forced to do because of the virus, it may actually be a positive thing in the end. Shout out once again to the Netherlands and their incredible bike culture that we could all learn so much from. I just thought this was a super funny GIF. If you guys don't know, the original while it's a joke, it's Gordon Ramsay playing a little joke on this girl doing the bread thing. Wasn't actually even part of an episode. But here you can see they've replaced Gordon with Max Kaiser, and they've replaced this poor young woman with Peter Schiff. Peter Schiff, the one who wouldn't buy Bitcoin, even though Max told him about it at $1, at $100, at $1,000, and now it's at $10,000. So he must be an idiot sandwich. Oh, bad news for Abbott Pharmaceuticals. The coronavirus test from Abbott that's been in use in the White House for weeks now is one of the least accurate tests out there. It's got a 15% false negative rate. So just to refresh the scientific language here, false negative means that you really have coronavirus, but the test says you don't. 15% of the time. So 85% of the time it works. That's like a B. That's a B. Solid B. And this is the little machine that the president showed off that he was so proud of, and he stood next to like Vanna White and he pointed at and stuff. Yeah, that's the one. Speaking of the White House, coronavirus outbreak at the White House. 11 Secret Service members are actively infected. 23 Secret Service members have recovered. 60 Secret Service members are self-quarantining. The president's valet, not just the person who parks him his cars, but the person who brings him his meals, acts as kind of his body man, also has the coronavirus. The vice president's press secretary, who happens to be married to Stephen Miller, the man who hates immigrants, and also works directly for the president, his wife has the coronavirus, and so does Ivanka Trump's personal assistant. So whether or not you believe in the coronavirus, whether or not you think reopening the country is a good idea, the virus doesn't care. The virus just wants to spread to more people. If you're near people, and especially if you're not wearing a mask, you are more than capable of spreading the virus. And we've got a good example of what that looks like. In South Korea, a 29-year-old tested positive. Turns out he went to 3 nightclubs not wearing a mask. They say that this one man has infected as many as 18 people. 1 to 18 after 3 nightclubs. And South Korea is now going to trace up to 1,500 contacts to try to find all the people that he had contact with. They've even slowed their reopening. They were ready to reopen, and they've slowed it because of one man without a mask infecting 18 people, perhaps leading to 1,500 other people infected. You can see how it quickly gets out of control and spirals right up to 59,000. So it's not about you. It's about the people you will infect. You're wearing a mask to protect other people, and most importantly, to kill this motherfucking virus. The virus is the enemy. Your feelings, your political views, the virus doesn't care. Look at this. They thought they were safe because their building was pretty and white and old. They were wrong. And meanwhile, I'm not a big fan of Boy Maddow, but he nailed him here. He says, they try to prevent President Trump and Vice President Pence from getting sick by implementing an incredibly robust testing regime. The Trump administration does have a plan, and they're implementing it right in front of us. They're just applying it for 2 people. And it was incredibly interesting with these new Secret Service and other people within the White House getting the coronavirus to hear that the president and everyone that he meets and works with and comes in contact with is being tested almost every day, whereas you, as a normal worker, are just supposed to go back to work. This doesn't make any sense. Andrew Yang writes in saying, the economic recovery will not be like a rocket ship. It will be more like a truck in the mud. Congress should take dramatic action immediately to put money into people's hands and shore up jobs. The country is sinking into the mud quickly. And Andrew Yang's, of course, right here. His idea of universal basic income has been brought up as one of the only real ways out of this. As I've been saying, the United States is about to reopen our country and get everyone reinfected so we can have a whole second wave that's worse than the first. Just like Herman's Hermits. Second course, worse than the first. But yeah, we're going to do that because we're impatient and we can't stay inside a few more weeks or a few more months. Certainly, we have tons of the ability to print money.
There is an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve.
It's freaking infinite. And we could print money for a couple more months. We could stay inside and we could kill this virus. Instead, we're going to reinfect everybody and we're going to have to spend even more time inside. It's that whole thing where you're too impatient and you can't wait for the thing to be over. So you don't wait for it to be over. You go out there, you get reinfected, you get it again. And now it lasts even longer. So yes, you pay for your lack of patience. If you're patient and you want to stay home like me and you can, your job and stuff works out, you can survive this thing. Oh, serious burn. I'm going to get in trouble for this one, but I was sarcastic at CoinDesk this morning. I couldn't help it. So here it is. I said, CoinDesk has this whole thing about what started with Bitcoin 11 years ago has given rise to experiments and breakthroughs. CoinDesk 50 recognizes the most innovative, viable projects, promising another internet revolution. So it was pretty low. I just didn't think it was that great. It really seemed like they were another one of these like Bitcoin magazine coming back to Bitcoin and Bitcoin.com and the Bitcoin Twitter handle. All these people who could have just stuck with Bitcoin the whole time, now suddenly coming back to it. And it was another time where they can say, hey, yeah, we're very Bitcoin. But look at these 50 incredible things. So I had no choice but to lambast them and be sarcastic and satirical, which isn't going to help me get jobs anywhere. But here it is. I thought it was funny. Here I said, not once in 11 years has that cheapskate Satoshi Nakamoto ever purchased an ad on CoinDesk. That's why we don't give a shit about Bitcoin. Here are 50 projects with a better chance of giving us money. I think the problem with really good satire is that it's funny because it's true. Shout out to Hartej. He sent this incredible video of a young boy going to school in Japan. Let's just watch it while we talk over it to try to maintain fair use. You can see they're spraying the bottom of his shoes. Also, you can see that he's working with this and he's practiced it. He's ready. He throws his mask in the trash. So much for all those goofy designer masks they're tricking you into wasting your money on. He washes his hands, hand sanitizer. Some kind of blowing machine blows all over his clothes and his backpack. Look at the care, which she's making sure he sprays all over. And then I think this is a like a dryer or a sanitizer, but it's made like a little robot. And I don't know if he's looking into it or blowing into it too, but incredible little robot. And whoop, there you go. You're all set. You're clean and ready to go to school. And you also note the way that she, and on the inside there, is still wearing a mask. Everyone else is still wearing their masks, but this is just a little preview of what the future is going to look like. This is just a school. So you have to imagine if you wanted to go to a movie or something and you're willing to submit to this, I don't know how many movies you're going to go to if you're going to go to them that often. And yes, in about 2 years, science willing, we'll get ourselves a vaccine and maybe we'll try to go back to normal then. But even then, a lot of that new normal is going to be about preventing this from happening again. So it's not going to be, it's going to be a while. Shout out to George Takei, again, telling the truth here. George says, of course, Sulu from Star Trek, he says, I could do his voice. I could try. Okay. I didn't spend my childhood in barbed wire, enclosed in internment camps, so I could listen to grown adults today cry oppression because they have to wear a mask at Costco. Oh, I love George Takei. He's so great. Not just the voice, but he's a heck of a nice guy too, I imagine. But yeah, he nails it here. And yes, George Takei was in the American internment camps of the Japanese during World War II. So yes, things could be worse. You could just watch TV all day right now. It's not that bad. I got a big bag of rice. I could live pretty long on that. But things could definitely be worse. We're still struggling through the news here. Trying not to be political, but again, the virus is what the virus is. So shout out to the 19 people who are sticking with us and learning about the news today. Give us a thumbs up and a share. Hello to everybody on Facebook. There's not that many of you, but you could give us a share. And if you're on Periscope, be sure to click that get notifications button and pound that heart button or something like that. So thanks for joining us. Sorry about the news. It is what it is. If you want to hear more about the meaning of life, rewind to the beginning of the show where I read a lot of excerpts from Viktor Frankl's great book, Man's Search for Meaning. Glenn Kessler writes in, new deaths from COVID-19 weekly average, 25 largest countries normalized by population. The USA has flatlined for 2 weeks, while almost every other country is going down. Very dismaying. And again, remember, these results are generally delayed by about a week. We're getting fresh numbers, but we're getting fresh numbers that really represent about a week ago, maybe even 2 weeks. And we can see here the downward trend of so many of these. Portugal, Germany, not the UK, not Belgium. Well, UK actually has a big down, but that might be a statistical problem. Italy trending down, Spain trending down, Netherlands, France, Sweden even trending down, Spain, Ecuador. Well, Ecuador's all over the place. They must have reporting problems. But we can see here the United States has flattened, which is great. Good job staying home. Everyone staying home made this graph go flat. But the problem is we need to keep staying home, right? The virus goes away if person-to-person transmission stops. So in the models, which again are just a model, if everybody froze in place for 14 days and an hour, something like that, the virus would be toast, right? Obviously, we can't freeze in place. People have to work, people have to travel, they have to go place to place. There's still going to be some spread of the virus, but it's the freezing in place that stops it. So if you look at this chart and you imagine, what if the United States stayed inside for 2 more weeks or maybe a month and a half, right? You got to think that staying inside would lead this thing to go down, right? But the problem is we're not going to stay inside, right? We've already said right around here that we're going to go back outside. So you have to assume the chart's going to go back up. This is not a good scene. It's just numbers. All you have to do is look at the numbers. We are not ready for this. Shout out to the United Kingdom. It's too little, too late, but this is going to happen everywhere. This is going to cascade. I'd already mentally pictured this, and I'm not surprised that they're actually starting it. New arrivals to the United Kingdom face a 14-day quarantine. That's right. Welcome to the UK. Right this way, we're going to put you in a little kind of a hotel room or something, a little quarantine action. We're going to feed you whatever we feel like feeding you, and in 14 days, you can enjoy Europe. Sadly, most people only go for 14 days. This isn't good. If you were a businessman, you just flew into the UK to have a business meeting, maybe spend the night in a hotel and fly right back to New York. You can't do that anymore. That's off the books. So this is a major change, and this is only one country so far. You have to imagine soon all the countries, as well as the Schengen zone of Europe, the shared travel zone of the EU, you got to figure that's gone. You got to figure that, 14-day wait to get here, 14-day to go to France, 14-day wait to go to Germany. I mean, you could spend months in Europe and only see 2 countries, and their countries are just as close as our states. So major change for European travel. Imagine if I tried to make it to one of my conferences. I mean, I'd have to leave 2 or 3 weeks early to the conference. I guess maybe if the 14-day quarantine is free, it's like a free 14 days kind of in the UK, I guess, positives. But I imagine they got to charge you for it too or something. I mean, you can't just feed people and house them for 14 days for free all the time. I don't know. But yeah, major story. UK arrivals face a 14-day quarantine. Imagine if you just came up from like Germany or Amsterdam. It's like an hour flight. Then you have to wait 14 days before you can have your meeting or whatever. It's the new world, baby. Shout out to Governor Gavin Newsom of California. My dreams are coming true. He says California is now a vote-by-mail state. Every registered voter will receive a mail-in ballot for the November election. We'll also provide safe in-person voting options. The right to vote is foundational to our democracy. No one should be forced to risk their health to exercise that right. Vote by mail, I've been saying it since the stolen election of 2000 and the stolen election of 2004. We need vote by mail. We need open source tabulating machines with trusted hardware where we can know that the code's being executed properly. But at least we'll have the paper ballots. If you have paper ballots, you can always rerun the election through the tabulating machines. You can always run a hand count with real human beings looking at the ballots. If you don't have paper ballots, or if you have a questionable paper ballot printed by a machine, you don't have an election. So I'm very impressed that California is doing this. I'm very sad that the rest of the country is not doing this. I'm going to be very sad when people have to go out on election day and get sick and maybe die to try to vote. This is a tragedy. It's slow motion. It's caused by humans. We just hit the deadline a couple days ago where they said, if you're going to do vote by mail, you have to tell us now. We have to print the things. We have to, prepare the system, so on and so forth. But instead of doing that, they put some kind of a Trump political crony in charge of the post office, and they're probably going to be trying to ruin it or rig it or wreck it. And it's sad because this is the foundation of democracy. And if you believe that we're really having a conversation about ideas and that one side is debating with the other side about ideas, then we go to vote, then you should believe like I do that all those votes should be counted and that everyone should be able to vote and that that's democracy. And the way it turns out is the way it turns out. But that's not what one side thinks. Remember the huge anti-stay-at-home protest in Wisconsin? 72 people have now tested positive after indicating that they attended a large event. It's hard to think of many others. So there it is right there. 72 of the protesters who thought, for reasons I can't understand, that they were stronger than the virus. They showed up with their guns, machine guns even, multi-shot, bang, 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 right? The virus got them anyway. The virus got them anyway. Your guns don't protect you from the virus. Shout out to Dr. Jason Johnson, who says, we hear stories about the coronavirus causing blood clots and strokes that kill or cripple. My colleague had so many clots in his lungs that it damaged his critical tissue. His lung capacity has been reduced by 30%, and he's in his early 40s. There's no cure for that. So maybe you don't die. Maybe you just wheeze for the rest of your life. How does that sound? You can't breathe? Got to carry around an oxygen machine? I'm sure glad I went to that protest. I'm sure I went outside to watch a movie I could have downloaded on streaming. I just had to get my hair cut. Clippers are so hard to use. Oh, my roots were showing. Oh, no. As he says here, there will be hundreds of thousands of men and women like his former colleague, people in their 30s and 40s who physically survive COVID-19, but with long-term health difficulties that will burden them and our healthcare system long before our current infrastructure expects. So get with it. That which doesn't kill you could just cripple you for the rest of your life. Your choice, going to a concert, going to a movie, having fun at a protest, getting your hair cut. I mean, come on, remember the Italian guy? Oh, what's your hair going to look like in the coffin? You've got to look good in the coffin. It's more frustrating when it happens in slow motion like this. Say what you will about war and maybe Hiroshima and Nagasaki. At least it only took 5 minutes. At least we didn't have to sit around saying, there's going to be another Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 2-3 weeks. We could totally prevent it by staying home and printing more money.
There is an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve.
Instead, we're just going to let all these unique and individual inputs to our human machine die. Our human machine will be poorer without all these people. And I don't even know them. As Aaron Rupar, who's been putting out fantastic clips of the Trump or Trump press conferences, whatever they are, he says, there is no reason that people have to be forced to go to work right now in the teeth of a pandemic. The federal government has the resources to keep all people afloat until the U.S. can get new cases into remission. And that's what we need to do. That's what a country smarter than us would do. That's what the other countries are doing. They're not just reopening when the numbers look bad, when the graphs say it's still out there. They're not like us. Meanwhile, the National Basketball Association continues to lead the world. As Commissioner, perhaps President Silver says here, until there's a vaccine or some cocktail preventing people from dying from the virus, we are going to be dealing with this collectively. The ultimate issue is how much risk we're all comfortable with taking. And unlike the American people who have no chance of surviving this, the Basketball Association has been sitting down with their people and discussing various options. It's as if the basketball players are a part of the National Basketball Association, and the National Basketball Association benefits by them being alive and being able to play basketball. It's almost as if you think the American workers would be a part of the American system, and that we would need those workers to be alive so that the system could run. But we don't do that. So they had a respectful meeting. They had an audio call. They talked about the various options that James D'Angelo recommended to you right here on this show over a month ago. Escape pods. They're considering taking one end of the Las Vegas Strip, completely closing it down, housing the basketball players inside the hotels, and having them go from their hotel to the court, back to the hotel, keeping an entire quarantine system to allow these players to be safe. They're also worried, and this was amazing because they have plenty of money. They can do what they want to do, but they're worried that they don't want to use too many tests to have this plan. They're worried that having a fun game of basketball on TV so we could all enjoy it might cost us too many tests, which could cost us first responders and lives. Look at the responsibility being shown by the National Basketball League. I've never been more impressed with President Silver and the work he's doing. And I've been critical of many sports commissioners, especially the ones that don't punish cheating, ban the Houston Astros. But yes, we would be much better off if we were ruled by the NBA, if we were members of the NBA. I envy basketball players who have such care and concern from their employer. Certainly, they're millionaire basketball players. They're in a bit of a different position than perhaps some IT guy, working with a bunch of other IT guys. But we would be much better off. New York Times has a new graph of jobs lost in April. You can see that it pretty much breaks the graph. We've never had any kind of job losses like this before. And again, the Keynesian answer, Bitcoin, we can't just print, but Keynesianism, when they're in a moment of crisis, when they're in a depression, and whether you like it or not, the United States economy is Keynesian, the world's economies are Keynesian. The only ones who really aren't Keynesian right now, I'd say, would be maybe China, if you want to say they're still communist, maybe Cuba, but they're just really struggling. So yes, Keynesianism,
There is an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve,
is the toolbox that we currently have. If we were all Bitcoin, I wouldn't be saying print more Bitcoin, because that's not possible. But in this situation, you print more money, you pay these people to stay home and not get sick so we can kill the virus so that we can win. Meanwhile, they just had a briefing yesterday. This is the new press secretary. She's a piece of work. She was on the McLaughlin Group once, actually, the post-McLaughlin Group, not the real McLaughlin Group, but still. And on her way out, this reporter yelled the perfect question at her. He said, "Why did you spend the first part of this briefing talking about Flynn when both the president and the vice president were exposed to coronavirus and we have historic, really unbelievable, uninflation? Is that really what's at the top of the mind today for the White House?" It was crushing. Let's watch it on the way out. Here she goes.
I'm sorry to cut this short, but as you know, you guys were supposed to
Run
be
away.
3 minutes ago with the President of the United States. So I will leave you guys with that. I hope you have a wonderful
Why did you
weekend.
spend the first part of this
And
briefing
thanks so
talking
much,
about
everyone.
Mike Flynn when both the president
Justice
and
matters.
vice president were exposed to coronavirus and we have historic unemployment? Is that really what's top of mind today for the White House?
Bam. Bam.
I'm sorry to cut this short, but as
And
you
that's,
know, you
again,
guys were
that's how you set your priorities. They were talking, for reasons I can't understand, about disgraced National Security Advisor Mike Flynn, who pled guilty twice, and yet the Justice Department seems to have dropped the investigation, though he pled guilty twice. So yes, anyway, even if that's your favorite story in the world, it's not more important than the president and the vice president exposed to coronavirus. Like, this is terrifying. They are actually, for what it's worth, they're running the country. If they were sick for 2 weeks with someone stomping on their chest, as well as the fact that they're kind of older gentlemen, it's a big freaking deal. As well as this unemployment. I mean, I know we all want to cover things up, but you think you can cover up this? Look at that. Everybody knows somebody that's out of work. Every business you can think of has let their staffs go. We didn't save the firm. We don't have firms to go back to. This is not Denmark, right? We're going to be able to look at the Denmark model later on. We're going to look at the U.S. model, and people smarter than me, professors and such, are going to compare them. And I'll bet now they're going to find out that the Denmark model of saving the firm worked much better than the United States model of putting everyone on unemployment, then hoping that the businesses come back, question mark, question mark, question mark, then the unemployment people get jobs again. I mean, I know it's going to come to this, and I know I don't want to think about it, but can you imagine after this goes back, let's say you're a waiter, and you go apply for a job, and there's 50 other waiters there, and you go apply for another job, and there's 50 other waiters there, and there's 50 other waiters there. it's going to be so hard to get jobs. It's terrifying. I mean, even if you're the best of the best, you're the smartest, you're the fastest, you're the cleanest, it's going to be very hard to get jobs. Whereas if we had saved the firms, again, and it might not work because the demand might not show back. I mean, it depends how you go. You also have to kill the virus. You can't just save the firms and not kill the virus. Everything is dependent on killing the virus. But if we had saved the firms, at least people would have jobs to go back to. At least we wouldn't be sacrificing all that educational knowledge that they built up in the firms, even if it's just waiting tables or serving Jamba Juice. You're going to have to retrain everyone. It's a waste. Shout out to this professor. He was on MSNBC talking about VE Day. Very cool. And I noticed in the background, you can see that he has the Menard anti-war Napoleon infographic. I don't know if you guys are really familiar with this, but it jumped off the screen at me because what's so great is you can even see in the corner here. It's very, very hard to see, certainly, especially. I mean, I'll make it a little bigger here, but you can see the chart right there. You can see Napoleon's army getting smaller as it goes deeper into Russia. This is a really great taste. I have a printed copy of this in a frame myself too, and it was heavily explained to me at the Edward Tufte infographics seminar that I went to. But you can see here, this is the greatest anti-war graphic in history. This is maybe even the greatest infographic in history. If I thought you guys had seen it before, I wouldn't waste so much time explaining it, but I'm going to go through it just a little bit in case it's your first time seeing it. As you can see here, it's written in French. That won't stop me, but it's of Russia, 1812 to 1813. These are Napoleonic Wars. The size of this band here, this kind of brown band, is the size of Napoleon's army. Right here we can see it's around 420,000 as it rolls through. As the band gets smaller, we see that Napoleon's army is shrinking. These lines down here at the bottom link the graphic to the temperature. We can see right here, minus 30, minus 24, minus 20, up to 11, back down to minus 21, minus 3. So the temperature is never really above 0 here, and it's the cold. It's the cold of Russia that's killing them. They also had bad uniforms. It's a bit of a rumor, but I believe it. It's very interesting. They had lead buttons. This might not mean anything to you. They had lead buttons on their coats. Well, what happens to lead when it's cold? Well, it shrinks up, it gets smaller. So their buttons on their coats stopped functioning because of the cold, and their coats would hang open and they would get colder. They had the wrong gear for this. They expected this to be over. They wanted to just run in, get this over with, but of course, never attack Russia during the winter. We can see Napoleon's army does make it to Moscow, still a good-looking line. This black line here is the retreat. Oh, I guess the temperature is tied to the black line. My mistake. The temperature is on the way out. But still, just amazing infographic to try to combine all of this, as well as you can see some of the rivers here. This is actually the geographical landscape that they went through. And you can see this black line on the way back getting smaller and smaller and smaller till it's almost like just a pen line back here. That's 4,000. They were joined by some of the other troops. That's about 10,000 troops that returned to the other side of the Nemor River here. 10,000 out of 420,000. This is an anti-war statement. This is death. You can just look at it. You can visualize like what it looks like. What did Napoleon's army look like? This is maybe almost 500,000 people dead in this chart. This was an anti-war graphic. This is propaganda. Like, it's information, and it's one of the greatest infographics ever. But it's also anti-war, and it's also, essentially propaganda. It's information designed to speak, right? It speaks a certain thing. It tells you war is bad, unbelievably bad, and the temperature is bad. Don't attack Russia in the cold. But yeah, this is the Menard infographic. It's from the time periods from after the war. I want to say 1850s. Oh, here it is, 1869. So that's not so bad. I was pretty close. Off by 50 to 100 years is really good, actually. But so yeah, just shout out to this gentleman on MSNBC who had the graphic in his background. I thought it was really cool. I thought this was funny. Kate, what's that scent you're wearing? I can't place my finger on it. Oh, it's naval supremacy. And this is more of that kind of soap for men. Some of them say smells like accomplishment, smells like productivity, but they found here that says smells like naval supremacy. I just thought it was great. I thought that was funny. 6 years ago, Mad Bitcoins went to the San Jose Comic Con with Jericandra Louvre and Abby Sue Cosplay. We had an audience-supported costume contest and gave around $300 in Bitcoin to the winners. And check it out right there. You can see Mad Bitcoins with Jericandra. She's doing a Black Widow, and Abby Sue is doing Rogue there. So we had a really good time. We walked all around the Comic Con. We did a little video, and it's pretty fun here. What we did is I pre-printed paper wallets, and then I sealed them in envelopes, and I numbered them. And then I printed out all the QR codes, the public QR codes for those wallets, and I numbered those as well. Then we went to the comic convention, and when we saw people with cool costumes, I'm going to start at the bottom here. We saw people with cool costumes. We talked to them. We said, hey, will you hold up this QR code and people can vote for you. And here's this envelope. And I was very serious with them. It had instructions on how to cash it in. It had the private keys in there. And I said, this is like an envelope of money. Like, I am giving you money. Please don't lose it. Maybe in a few years it'll be worth more, right? I don't know how it's going to go. But this was 2014. So you can see here, about 4 of the 15 people claimed it. I have some hopes that maybe this will be one of those articles that people write about. They gave away $67 in a contest, in a costume contest. And we go up to the top right here, our winner, the Alien, which is an incredible costume. It was terrifying looking. I know everyone thought the pretty girls were going to win, but no, the Alien guy destroyed it. And he got 1.385 Bitcoin that he has not cashed out. So it's pretty fun. You can just go right here. You can see if the coins have moved. And again, I didn't save any of the private keys. It would have been dishonest, so I didn't do it. Sure, I could use the $1,000 right now. Sure, everybody else could too, I'm sure. But yeah, there it is right there. The 1376 Bitcoins still in their account. So that's $1,500 they have waiting for them. And if Bitcoin goes up 10x, that could be 15,000. If it goes up 100x, that could be 150,000. So at that point, somewhere in between there, I hope that journalists will start writing articles about this and maybe trying to track some of these people down, interview them, see if they still have it. And if they do, help them cash in their winnings, because this is pretty cool. So that's a really fun thing we did about 4 years ago in the month of May. We went to a comic contest or costume show or whatever. It's really fun. And you can check out that video right here on the World Crypto Network. It's called 2014 Bitcoin Costume Contest. Any aspiring journalists. So it'd be a great thing to write an article about. We gave away $300 and now the top prize is worth $1,500. This is a pretty good costume contest, I think. And that's about it. I already talked about how I made fun of CoinDesk, and I don't know. They're not going to like it, but oh well, we'll deal with that when it comes to it. Just going to open up the shows for calls if you guys would like to call. I know it's a Saturday. Everyone's stuck at home anyway. I don't even have the chat up here. I'm going to go find the chat. But shout out, thanks to the 26 or so people who stuck with us, even during the news. I know that can be tough. Also, shout out to the Lightning Network Sprint. They're still going over on the
need to rebalance.
World Crypto #1 channel. We are dual broadcasting today. Thanks again to the to the power of YouTube. And remember, you can watch both of these shows. You just have to watch one of them later. It's not that bad. So it's still going on. You can check out the Lightning Network Sprint right here on the World Crypto Network. And I was trying to find my way to the chat. Let's see. You can check. Sorry, I'm looping myself here. There's the chat. Let's see what's going on in here. They don't care about sports. Okay. But yeah, check out the Lightning Network Sprint. I want to put the quote to that in the chat. And I also want to say, if you guys want to call now, you can talk about anything we talked about, or talk about the Bitcoin halving, or just talk about Bitcoin, or I don't know, even if you have a different take on me than the virus, you can call in and tell me your take. I'll give you the floor. I'm not saying I'm going to agree with you. You can try to convince me and change my mind if you want, but I would give you the floor, give you a couple minutes, get your opinion out there as well. But I do take it seriously. I think it's a real thing. Shout out to the chat. Let's see what they're saying. Man's search for meaning. Well, shout out to Chris. He says he likes it. Good stuff. And they don't care about the sports and the wealthy people. I don't. It's not so much about that. It's more about the entertainment. And it's also about, at a certain point, I just see them like the movie people or anybody else. They have a show that they need to put on. And if they don't put on their show, they don't make money either. So it's a bit of getting back to normal and would give people something to watch on TV. If you guys didn't watch James D'Angelo's incredible video about the escape pods, you don't know, but basically you just take the athletes, take their wives, whatever, quarantine them. Actually, it's called sequestration. You sequester them into something like a college dorm. Everybody gets a dorm room. Everybody's locked up for 14 days. They give them food, through the door, that kind of thing. No contact with anybody else. And after 14 days, you're clean, right? You're clean. You can't have the virus. They'll test you and stuff too, of course, no doubt. Then they let those people into this casino complex that's already cleaned. All the workers are clean. All the people that, all the food, everything's cleaned as it comes in. It's a new quarantine zone. You introduce the players, their wives, their children, whatever else, into this system. And then they can just go from the hotel room to the basketball arena, from the basketball arena to, I assume, some restaurants, because it is Vegas. We have a lot in the casinos. Those restaurant workers, the casino or the other workers at the basketball games, the people that help out and wipe the floor and all that kind of stuff, they could live inside of one of the casinos just like the players. They would go through the 14-day quarantine just like the players, and they generally wouldn't be able to go out. This is the sacrifice that you have to make to try to be able to do your job. Their job is playing basketball. The other people's jobs are, restaurants and, setting up the basketball game, this kind of thing. So I think it would be an interesting thing to get us some semblance of normal and to get something going back. Again, it's not the most important thing. I think the most important thing is killing the virus. But I was just very impressed by the NBA and their response, their continued response, their concern for their employees. And I just think they're thinking about it a lot more than other people are. So, but I think we're going to head about towards the end of this show. Thanks again to everybody for watching us. Check out the Lightning Network Sprint number 2. It's still going on right now on the World Crypto Network. Be sure to subscribe down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Give us a like. Likes really help people find this show. So please like this show and like other YouTube shows that you go to. Don't make them ask you. Just like. And if you don't like it, hey, push the thumbs down. That's fine too. But thanks so much, everybody, for joining us. We'll be back again tomorrow for Big Book Sunday. It's like my favorite day. I love big books. And I'm going to try to get Dan to come on. We'll hang out. Hopefully we'll have some more calls, some more interaction. And be sure to get ready for the World Crypto Network Halvening Party in just a few days, May 11th or May 12th. Subscribe. We'll be on this channel. Check us out on the Twitter at World Crypto Net or at Mad Bitcoins. I'll certainly be putting the announcement out there. And once again, the special guest is you. So I hope to see you at our Bitcoin Halvening Party. We're going to try to get as many people on the air as we can. Big people, small people, normal people, fancy people, all that kind of thing. We're going to get everything together for a big Halvening Party with you. Shout out to Martin. He just tuned in and it's already over. You'll just have to wait till the video renders and rewind to the beginning. I think it was good. I talked a lot about Viktor Frankl, this incredible book, Man's Search for Meaning. It's a bit hard to read. Certainly he's in a tough situation. He's in a concentration camp. But he has a great attitude. He has a great philosophical way to survive. And I think it's akin to what we're going through now. I think we could all learn a lot from his suffering and from his reaction to the suffering. He didn't let it get him down. And he had major suffering. And so do we, and so does everyone. So, but that's about it for this show. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time, bye-bye.